The reason for this is you got homocysteine in your blood. I've got it in my blood. Everybody listening to this podcast has homocysteine. But if you have an impaired ability to break homocysteine down, right, to take that amino acid, homocysteine, and convert it into a harmless amino acid called methionine, if you can't make this conversion, homocysteine rises. It causes something called hyperhomocysteinemia, high homocysteine in the blood. When homocysteine rises, it becomes one of the more inflammatory compounds in the human body. As it's cruising by the inside lining of the artery, it starts to irritate the artery. It actually reduces the artery's elasticity and can even cause it to constrict. So think about this. You've got 63,000 miles of blood vessel, roughly, in your body. It doesn't take much narrowing to drive pressure up. Think about it. 85% of all hypertensive diagnosis of high blood pressure, primary hypertension or essential hypertension, are idiopathic, right? Unknown origin. Only 15% of them are secondary hypertension, of where we know the exact cause. And so what we do is we take people that have high blood pressure. We run a bunch of tests on them. EKG, it's normal. EEG, it's normal. Heart and lung sounds, cardiac cath, dye contrast study. We do all of these cardiovascular tests, and they all come out normal. Yet the person still has high blood pressure. And that's largely because the high levels of homocysteine are causing vascular narrowing. I mean, this is a fixed system, right? So if I make the pipes smaller in a fixed system, pressure goes up. So in Dana's case specifically, and he's thrown his blood work out on the internet, so we can talk about his labs. But in his cases, he had one of the highest levels of homocysteine that I'd personally ever seen, and our clinical team had seen.
So when you say high blood pressure, could you define, like, I'm not good at that. Whenever I get my blood pressure, they tell me the number and they say it's good. And I go, okay. But
So,
I don't know,
like,
what's a good number?
So 120 over 70, 120 over 80.
And what's high?
130, 140, 150, 160.
When does it get dangerous?
140, 150 starts to get dangerous. People
Really?
walk around at 140, 150, 160 all the time.
And they don't know it.
It's the silent killer. You don't feel it. You think you would feel high blood pressure, but very often it's the silent killer because you don't feel it. It's not like you hear your blood rushing in your ears, although you may. It's not like you feel pressure in your head or pressure in your neck or pressure in your chest. That's why high blood pressure, hypertension, is one of the silent killers in cardiovascular disease, right? In fact, one of the first primary symptoms is sudden death, right? So we often put people on hypertensive medication before we actually look at whether or not they have high levels of homocysteine or whether or not they might have a gene mutation specifically called MTR, and you could test for it, or MTRR. And what this gene codes for is it codes for the enzymes that break down homocysteine and turn it into an amino acid called methionine, right? And so if this conversion is impaired, and this homocysteine starts to rise, and your vascular system constricts, it can drive your pressure up. And it drives your pressure up without anything being wrong with the heart. So then we start standing on the heart, which is what happened in Dana's case. Beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, diuretics, all of these things. His blood pressure was still through the roof.
What was his number?
I think he was 160 over 110. I want to say it was very high. And it was consistently high. We were actually, our clinical team was taking his blood pressure 2 or 3 times a day, 7 days a week, and it was consistently very elevated, even though he was on blood pressure medication.
Really? So statins? Is that what he was on?